Max Verstappen didn't leave the Qatar GP all that happy despite taking the win after being demoted to P2 after the qualifying session in one of the most bizarre penalties that the sport has ever seen. Nevertheless, the Brit made sure that his rival Russell will feel the anger and wrath that he feels regarding his actions. And when talking about it, the four-time world champion didn't mince his words at all. He was supported by his team principal Horner, as it did look like Russell made a move that was very unnecessary that put Verstappen in this position. So with this in mind, could we see a massive rivalry for the 2025 season? And if so, does Russell have what it takes to take down Verstappen from the top of the world? One of the most infamous penalties was dished out in Qatar, and with Verstappen being handed out a one-place grid penalty due to impeding Russell by driving unnecessarily slow, it has marked the dark side of the Formula One sport, drivers doing some very dirty tricks in order to gain an advantage over the rest of the grid. While Verstappen was penalised for driving unnecessarily slow while Alonso was in front of him, you could easily make the argument that Russell, who was on a preparation lap, was driving unnecessarily fast, and he put Verstappen in a situation as if the Red Bull driver had impeded Russell. Be that as it may, Verstappen was amazed by one thing. When Russell stands in front of the cameras in the Formula One world, there is a general feeling that he's a good guy and a proper racer. But when they are behind closed doors with the stewards, it's a whole other story. When talking about this to a greater extent, Verstappen said that he lost all of the respect he had for Russell and threatened that he won't treat him the same as his other rivals, further hinting, "I was quite surprised when sitting there in the stewards' room what was all going on. Honestly, very disappointing, because I think we're all here, we respect each other a lot, and of course I've been in that meeting room many times in my life, in my career, with people that have raced, and I've never seen someone trying to screw someone over that hard, and that for me is too much. I lost all respect." Russell always does it very nicely here in front of the camera, but then when you are inside with him in person, it is just a different person. I can't stand that, and it's actually better for him to F off. I don't want to get involved in this. There is no doubt about whether or not Verstappen was in the right, because he wasn't told that Russell was on a flying lap behind him for one simple reason. Russell wasn't on a flying lap at all. It was just a cheap trick that Verstappen has fallen onto, and while it was a mini win for the Brit, he lost the lead in turn 1, something that, according to Sky F1 pundits, was promised by Verstappen to Russell when they exited the stewards' room. This goes to show that Russell is definitely not the type of driver that maybe we feel he is, and that is just further exaggerating the nature of this sport when it comes to driving to the absolute limit. However, Verstappen has even risked being fined by the FIA, as he went on to swear again when he's been clearly told to stop after the community service penalty he was given in Singapore. There are tons of situations in which the four-time world champion would have reacted much better had it been a driver of Hamilton or Leclerc's calibre, but the behaviour of Russell has definitely aggravated Verstappen for many reasons. First of all, Russell does not play any significant factor in both of the championships, as he and Mercedes are in a dead man zone and stuck in a point of no return. Second, the fact that he used a trick that wasn't used by anyone so far is just putting more dirt on his name, as even Alonso went on to show his support for Verstappen and the penalty he received, adding, "Max's penalty yesterday, I don't know about that. I only read the news that it was a one-place penalty for... I don't know. He was slow, but George was on a slow lap as well. In Abu Dhabi, if I am on a slow lap, I will push crazy to the car in front to have a penalty. I guess if he is impeding me, that is the only thing that we need to be careful about." But they have a tough race here. They've been monitoring F3, F2 and F1 in the same weekend, and they still do a good job. It's only the second race for the new race director. So far, he is doing a very good job, so I am happy at the moment. Of course, the penalty itself doesn't sit well with the team principal of Red Bull, and he feels like the manners of Russell are something that do not sit well with the four-time world champion. And if he is able to aggravate a driver like Verstappen, then it's safe to assume that there is something wrong with Russell and he needs to improve in the foreseeable future. When addressing this matter, Horner pointed out, let's just say Verstappen wasn't enamoured with the decision of the FIA. It was a very strange decision because the circumstances of yesterday, both cars were on slow laps, and I did feel that George and Mercedes made a big deal out of it. It was unprecedented on a slow lap for Max to end up with a one-place penalty, but he converted the dirtiest side of the grid into one of his best starts of the year and was determined that wherever George was going to brake, he was going to brake later, and converted that grid position into the lead by the end of turn 1. Being a rival on the track and losing respect for that rival are two different things, and this is something that Horner has explained when talking about the situation between Russell and Verstappen. There have been many fights between these two in the past, but it seems like all of them have ended up with a clash and an off-track explanation. Let's remember last year and how Russell left a hole in Verstappen's car when they went wheel to wheel. This is why Horner feels like Verstappen was quite disappointed with what he had to deal with in the stewards room, and now that the Drivers' Championship is over, it does bring another twist to the story. What is Russell trying to prove here? Furthermore, Horner said, Max, I think he was disappointed. I mean, if you look at it objectively, one could argue that perhaps George was driving a little too quickly on a slow lap with two slow cars ahead of him, so maybe he was driving recklessly. It was frustrating to get that penalty, but he was already motivated to win this race, and I think it only added to his enthusiasm to get off the line well. I think there was a little bit of gamesmanship going on in that. The anger of Max was transferred to Russell nevertheless, and according to Naomi Schiff, who is a Sky F1 pundit, the Dutchman used X-rated words to Russell and promised him that he would lead the race past turn 1. That is precisely what happened, and elaborating on this matter to a greater extent, Naomi said, I am not going to repeat Verstappen's words. I don't know if the FIA will give me a fine if I repeat the words. I think Max had a word with George after they left the stewards room. I think he made the message very clear that he should watch his back. The situation has raised a lot of concerns for 2025 because it's obvious that Russell, whether we like it or not, has become a continuous contender in the second half of the season. And if Mercedes finds the performance on their car from 2025 onwards, he is going to be a very good candidate to take the championship away from Verstappen. Yes, he would have to beat Antonelli first in order to prove his worth in Mercedes and being a leader in his own team, because the circumstances under which he received this role are questionable, to say the least. In a fair fight, it's not very convincing that Russell would beat Hamilton, as a lot of changes have been made to the 7-time world champion's car throughout the season, mostly because he announced that he's leaving the team for Ferrari, and Mercedes seem to have taken this a bit personally. Be that as it may, Verstappen and Russell are going to present a lot of heated battles on the track, and the Brit might be smart to learn a thing or two from his compatriot Norris as to whether or not it's smart to race the 4-time world champion the way that he has started to race him. The battles need to be won on the track, so with all this in mind, do you think that Verstappen's statement shows what type of driver and human being Russell really is? And more importantly, do you think that there is a scenario in which these two can fight for the championship as early as 2025? Let us know in the comments below.